our physical development develops as a consequence of its history as well. So all of this stuff is kind of a buzz: political upheaval, intellectual upheaval, theological upheaval, and it's starting to pull at some very, very, very old and established threads that held English society together. And of course, Oxford was the bastion, the sort of ramparts that would die before English civilization fell, because they were the most conservative kind of guarantors. Oxford was kind of the national seminary as well as an institution of learning. So if you didn't go into law, you were clergy. So you're the guy that's holding the world together. And so that was the way Newman attacked his theological studies. How do you hold the Church of England together if the state is no longer Anglican? Now, the Church of England is by law established. Parliament votes on every liturgical change, approves of every bishop named. The bishops serve in the House of Lords. Okay, so now you've got Catholics in Ireland that want to have political franchise. You have dissenting Christians who aren't part of the Church of England that want to be able to serve in Parliament. This is the echoes of the age of revolution. And finally, Catholic establishment happens. The test in corporations, which guaranteed that Parliament would only be staffed by Anglicans, are removed. Now you have people who...
What was the time that it was removed?
This was the exact dates are lost on me. This is the
first around Newman's time.
Yeah. No, this is the first few years of the 19th century. Yeah, so
for some reason I want to say like 1821.
It's
Way off, but
the Catholic emancipation happens a little bit later, and I should probably have these dates just ready in my head, but I don't. But it's the movement, that's of course being pushed really, really hard. By what's his name in Ireland. It gets going, but it's in the 1820s that it finally comes to the sort of.
So this happens while he's at Oxford.
Oh yeah. No, as a matter of fact,
A student in Oxford, I should say.
Yeah, the guy that was the Parliament, the MP for Britain, was an Oxford guy. So this is all happening on his doorstep. But you can see how very quickly it gets interpreted as an attack against the church, because now you have non-Anglicans making decisions for the church, and they have dogmatic weight because it's things like voting on the prayer book. and they're voting on things like whether or not non-Anglicans, whether dissenters can be admitted to Oxford and Cambridge, which again is another sign of the crumbling. So they're starting to see just on the horizon, it never finally does happen, but they start worrying about what's going to happen when the Church of England is no longer the established church, when Anglicans are one more denomination among others like they have in the United States. And this is the experience that they're working out of, right? Well, Newman decides that if you can't root the Church of England's identity in its connection with the monarch, which is what the tether, that's what has held the Church of England together. The Church of England is a bunch of warring parties. You've got high church Anglicans that are brass and class and very posh and very society, well ordered and sometimes very, very liberal. You've got low church Anglicanism that's near fundamentalist and very Protestant. You got Anglo-Catholics that are higher than the highest expression of Roman liturgy and writing, the high as anything that you would find in Eastern Orthodoxy, and they don't agree on doctrine, they don't agree on practice or
Where
anything
would the
else.
folks like Our Lady of Atonement fit in that?
Yeah, that would be Anglo-Catholics.
Anglo-Catholic,
Yeah, or even Anglo-Papalists. You know, they're Anglican still, but they really, really, really love the Pope. You know, and you know, so you got all these guys. You know, of course, the Anglo-Catholics come a little bit later because of Newman, but you've got all these sentiments, disagreements in doctrine. They're all pulling apart, and they have been since Queen Elizabeth, the very first Elizabeth. But what has held the Church of England together has been its connection to the monarchy. You know, that's the centripetal force that's pulled everybody together. You know, at one time, everybody was trying to get away, and the Queen kind of came in and established a settlement that gave every party just enough of what they wanted so that it was better for them to stay in than cut and run. Well, now if you pull the monarchy out of that, you know, it's enfranchisement. Nothing exists to hold the Church of England's factions together. They just splinter off and become different denominations. Well, what Newman proposes as a substitute is the consensus, the apostolic consensus of early Christianity. That you know, we all have the Bible, but we recognize that when people get together with their individual Bibles, they disagree on doctrine and practice and liturgy and everything else. So what guarantees that we will all read the Bible the same way? Newman said, aha, the witness, the consensus of early Christianity, the apostolic identity of the church was his solution. And that works really, really great. And of course, Newman starts publishing tracts with a cadre of other individuals. And they spawn what became a Catholic revival in the Church of England. That
Oxford movement.
The Oxford movement. Now, it was very, very powerful, very, very popular, but also very, very controversial. Controversial in two different circles.
Well, I have a question about that.
Okay, go ahead.
You said the Oxford movement. I thought the Oxford movement was basically the bashing of the Catholic, and not the other way around. It sounded like that's what
it was. Okay. This is the weird irony about the Oxford movement. The Oxford movement started out as a way to be Catholic, or rather apostolic, and you know, ancient. And you know, if you're going to start practicing church the way the ancient church did it, you're going to start looking more sacramental. You're going to start wearing vestments, and you're going to be concerned about things like liturgy. You're going to recognize that some things were done at the Reformation that don't look at all like what the earliest Christians did. And so consequently, you're going to look more and more Catholic. Now, Newman was fine with that, and so was Keble and Fruit and everybody else. But what happened was, and the opposition that they met was from the evangelical, low church, Protestant crowd in the Church of England. And they said, you guys are just a bunch of damn papists. You know? And so what the second order was Newman said, you know, we can't be Roman Catholic. Now they're accusing us of being Roman Catholic, but we're not Roman Catholic. We're just being apostolic. So the second wave of Oxford movement writings was all taken up with distinguishing their apostolical, that was the word that Newman liked to use, apostolical Christianity from the innovations of Rome. So, you know, the Oxford movement became, at least rhetorically, an anti-Catholic, an anti-Roman Catholic.
He was one of the leaders.
Yeah, and kind of movement, and so he and his Oxford movement compatriots are kind of trying to thread a needle. they hate Protestantism. They hate the record of the Protestant Reformation. It was bad news. It looked nothing like early Christianity that they wanted to emulate. But they had to distinguish themselves, on the other hand, from Roman Catholicism, because you can't be an Anglican and have any sympathy for Roman Catholicism.
You didn't do a very good job.
Not so much. So what? And why can't you have any sympathies as an Anglican for Roman Catholicism?
Because you're putting the monarchy against the papes.
Exactly. Yeah. You remember, at the Reformation, one of the big events was the gunpowder plot. What was the gunpowder plot? Anybody know?
Guy Fawkes.
Yep.
Well, Parliament.
Yep.
Makes it look like the papes did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Quy Fawkes was a Catholic, and he plotted to blow up the Queen Elizabeth and Parliament in session. Basically, chop the head off the English government in the name of Roman Catholics. So to be in Newman's time and to be a Catholic, even that far away from Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, was not unlike joining the Taliban, converting to Islam in a fundamentalist Protestant town. It was to join the enemy. It was an act of political infidelity as much as it was an act of religious infidelity. So you can understand the pressure that he felt, and he was being egged on by friend and enemy alike, that you've got to account for yourself and defend why you're not Catholic. Well, the way he did it was he borrowed from some older sources that basically did two things. He said, number one, that we're going to paint Anglicanism as a middle way. Now, the English have always thought of themselves as a middle way, but the traditional way they explain the middle way is that they are a middle way between Catholicism, between Roman Catholicism on one hand, and Puritanism, which was an extreme form of Calvinist, Protestantism that flourished in the Netherlands. They said, okay, we are a middle way between those two things. We're going to keep our vestments and our bishops, but we are still Protestant. We're just Protestants of a middle way between the Puritans and the Catholics, but still very Protestant. Well, the way Newman recast the middle way is to say that no, we are a middle way between Catholics. Those are still one place that we want to avoid, but between Catholics and Protestantism, so that in Newman's hands, the Church of England, Anglicanism, was neither Catholic nor Protestant, but was a middle third thing that was apostolic.
And that's distinguished from being the midpoint between Roman Catholicism and Puritanism, right? So more of an evangelical Protestantism.
Yeah, sort of a broad Protestantism that's not super Calvinist.
Okay.
The way you understand the difference between a Puritan and a not Puritan is by recourse to something called the regulative principle. The regulative principle basically says that God desires to be worshipped and has prescribed for us explicitly how we are to worship him. So that anything that God has not explicitly prescribed to us, we cannot choose. So, do you see vestments for clergy in the New Testament? No. Then no vestments.
And it's entirely scriptural.
Yeah,